Hey, you ever feel like when you using one of those ice picks to break up ice and whatnot? Like when you're doing it, you kind of feel like you're using one of those prison shanks you see in the movie or something like that. No, no, that's me. Okay, I was just wondering. But oh, okay, you ready? All right. On this episode, we're going to talk with the Vice President of Heritage Action for America, Jessica Anderson, about the importance of political engagement. Talk about the New York Times and what they, I guess, the trouble they got in for being objective. And Colin Kaepernick is back in the news. Football's back in the swing of things with the preseason. So I guess he's got to make his voice known again for whatever reason. So that, and I'm pretty sure other things that are going to come across my mind on this episode of Trend Chat.
From the highways of America, here's the podcast where we talk politics, a little entertainment, some culture, and this and that, from the road to your ears. This is Trend Chat with your host, Brian Bledsoe.
And welcome to another episode of Trend Chat. I am your host, Brian Bledsoe. And if you want to connect with us, we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or Snapchat. It's all the same name at Trend Chat 24/7. We're playing on what is this? I'm trying to think of all the podcast outlets that we're on, but I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to mention Google, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and other popular podcast outlets, because I honestly cannot name them all, because I honestly don't know where they're all at. But wherever you're listening, I appreciate it, and I would strongly advise you to like, share, and subscribe. 5-star reviews all around. And I mean, that's what I would like, a 5-star review. But if you want to put a 4, or at least a 4, I mean, at least tell me why. Maybe it's, could be a number of reasons, but I would like to, get some feedback about whether it's, whether it's 5-star, 4-star, whatever. Not even go past 4. Just go. But again, like, share, and subscribe. So, if you heard the last episode, and I'm hoping that you did, and in the beginning, we mentioned about what happened at El Paso, because it was right when we started recording. That's when all that went down with the shooting out in El Paso. And by the time we finished, we had another shooting that happened in Dayton, Ohio. And so, and like, that was all on the same day. And so we've had 2 tragic, events that have gone on in the past couple of days, and it's been a pretty rough week. I mean, not for me in particular, but for the people that have been affected in both of these shootings, and in the communities around it as well. But one thing I've noticed is that, so I mean, by this time, I'm pretty sure you probably heard all the information about both of the shootings. I'm not going to get all into the details about it. The one thing I'm thinking about it as far as this so far, as at the time of this recording at least, is that with everything that has happened in El Paso, and finding out about the shooter and all of that, and also finding out about the shooter in Dayton. Now, it's been, well, they both were covered about the same, but I noticed when we got more information about both of the shooters, and got information especially about the one in Dayton, it seems like the reporting on Dayton has kind of been diminished a little bit. It seems like, especially coming from mainstream media, the CNNs and all of them, like they tend to want to really focus on El Paso because of, the shooter kind of fits the narrative that they want to really report on, and they really want to talk about, the quote unquote rise of white supremacy and everything. So they really want to focus on that, but don't really want to talk too much about Dayton. They may talk about it, but the balance of it is tend to be tilted just to talk more about El Paso. And I would very well suspect the reason why, because the information on the Dayton shooter doesn't really fit their narrative, because they found out that he had very left-wing views. He was a supporter of Elizabeth Warren and all that. So I saw a tweet from CNN, which I was surprised. I was surprised with CNN and New York Times. Now think about it, because I guess it was just too obvious to ignore for CNN. So they just had to mention that, the shooter in Dayton had some very left-wing views, and I guess it was just too much out there for them to ignore. And I bet you that was a very bitter pill for them to swallow, to report on that. But yeah, so it just, in that sense, it just seems like, they kind of want to really shy away from that and just really want to focus on this, on one of the shootings, which is unfortunate because both need to be reported on because they're both tragic. But no surprise, you have the mainstream media playing their game because they need to, because they are very desperate in the sense, especially when it comes to the president. So, but I know for me, I posted earlier today a quote, I guess, for me, which is kind of weird. But I tweeted something a couple of days ago. It just because, like, a lot of times whenever a tragic event happens, that tends to be the time when everyone wants something done. So like the tweet is, like, in the wake of tragedy, the call of do something, and there was a hashtag going on around after these shootings. It was a hashtag do something along with gun control and other things as well. But like, in the wake of tragedy, the call of do something arises, and normally all we turn out doing is just surrendering more of our liberty, more of our rights. And that seems like that's the route we're going now, where you got this whole hashtag do something. And now, unfortunately, even to the point to where you have the president and also, Republicans in Congress are kind of going along with this, with these red flag laws now, in the midst of this tragedy. And it's a very emotional time, and I feel like, whether with good intentions or not, I mean, I feel like they feel like, because everyone telling them, hey, you got to do something, which don't just do something, because that could be as worse as with the tragedy that has happened. You could just make things worse for the country for years to come. So now, with these red flag laws, I mean, this, so there is a lot of nuance, a lot of stuff behind it. I would say, simply put, it would basically come down to, like, if someone, a family member, or then again, there's different laws across different states as well. Some want to use, like on the federal level, they want to use one of the states as an example as far as what they want to use for red flag laws or whatever. But basically, you can report on someone. This is very simplistic. I understand that. Just someone can report to law enforcement that you're a threat, and then they can come and take your guns because someone has perceived you as a threat. That's very simplistic. I know there's a lot more to it, but that's kind of the simple version of it. If you haven't heard about it at all, I would implore you to check it out. But either way, that right there, even from that simple, very simple definition that I just gave, that could be very problematic, especially if you going by someone else's reporting on you. Someone may not like you because you have guns, and just the simple fact that you having a gun, they perceive you as a threat. And the thing about it is that so not to really get too deep into this, but I'm just thinking about it off the top of my head. So, I mean, if someone reports you and then, law enforcement comes in and then they take your firearms or whatever like that, I mean, that right there, is an infringement because without the due process, if it happens that way. And even if you have to if you had to due process, okay, maybe something, but even I don't see that right now. And if they're just coming in taking your guns, right, and then you got to prove yourself innocent, because once they taking it from you, now you got to prove that you're not a threat, and that kind of goes against the whole innocent to proven guilty. With these red flag laws, it's kind of making you, basically guilty until, proven innocent. So, and in the meantime, no telling how long it takes for you to get your guns back, if you do. It kind of reminds me of the whole civil asset forfeiture issue, where people, where law enforcement can take your money, take your assets, and then you have to prove that you didn't do anything wrong to get your property back, which turns out to take lots of time and money to do. That's what it kind of feels like, and that's what it feels like to me. But one thing, and all of this is going on mainly because this is just another case where there is a tragedy and government is taking advantage of that emotion. In this case, this is a bipartisan, I guess, it taken advantage of in a way, but it seems like it's not even going to go anywhere because I saw something earlier that Chuck Schumer seems to not want to cooperate with the Republicans, even the ones that are saying they are for some of these red flag laws. I said red flag laws, red flag laws, and but he doesn't buy it, or he wants it to go further, obviously, because the main goal, if not for all, especially most Democrats, is just basically they call it gun reform, they can call it whatever they want. In the end of the day, it's basically they just want to take guns away from law-abiding citizens. If they can't take it from everyone, they want to take it from as many people as possible, because for one, it's easy to control the populace if they're not armed, for one. And I know that really sounds very dark and like, this conspiracy theory, but regardless of what people tell you, I know a lot of people, even in the two-way community, the Second Amendment community, tends to want to make it seem like, well, the Second Amendment is for self-defense, but it's also for hunting, and they kind of want to keep it there. No, it is also to protect yourself from the government. It is. Some try to want to sugarcoat it or try to want to gloss over that fact, but no. That is another aspect, and that is a main aspect of the Second Amendment, to protect yourself not only from a burglar in your house, also from the government if they want to infringe on your rights. And look, and I'm pretty sure by saying that first thing a lot of people want to think about when you go down that road. They're like, oh, you want to fight the government? Oh, what's your couple of guns are going to be against a tank or whatever like that? But okay, one, that's not the point, and two, you should have that right of self-defense. And one example I could think of is that, hey, we have a great military, and yet out there overseas, we're sitting there with fighting people over there in Afghanistan, and they don't have all the most sophisticated equipment themselves, and yet they're able to fight. But hey, that is a possibility, and that is something we should have a right to defend ourselves from all threats. So, but it seems like we're not even thinking about going in that direction as a country. We're more going towards trying to give away more of our rights as much as possible, and it always tends to be surrounding some sort of tragic event, which I understand why, because like I said, people are really caught up emotionally and just want to feel safe. And Colion Noir had a tweet that I retweeted and posted out myself, is that you don't have the right to quote unquote feel safe, but you do have a right to buy a gun and defend yourself. But that's a very unpopular, inconvenient truth. But a lot of people don't really see it that way, especially a good majority of people, when they basically have been told and basically have been conditioned, by the media and politicians that they need to give basically all our security to the state. I mean, that's how they're basically telling everyone to, like, you don't need a gun. The police can take care of you 24/7, 365. And if not, well, oh well. You shouldn't have the right to defend yourself. That's what a lot of these people in the media, especially, and a lot of these celebrities out here wanting to put out hashtag gun control. Meanwhile, while they're being heavily armed and protected themselves. So, but the answer, it's not gun control. That is not the answer. It really isn't. That's not the answer. The answer is more people in control of guns. Now, I'm not saying like just give everybody a gun. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the answer is not gun control. It's more people in control of guns. People who are fully capable of having a firearm, but as I've said before, have been conditioned to feel like they don't need one when they are fully capable of actually carrying. But there's a lot of people out there that just feel like, they're scared of guns and have been made to be scared of guns because of what they've been told by the media, and have been told over and over again that they don't need one, and that they should actually feel inferior. They like, oh, why you gotta have a gun on you? Because some people like, oh, you just you're insecure about yourself because you have a gun for some reason. They make these really absurd analogies for people to have the right to defend themselves, but it has worked, unfortunately, because a lot of people who are out there that could be out there protecting people whenever something like this happens have neutered themselves into just basically being a victim, when they very well could have been one of the people to protect someone, to stop someone whenever something like this happens. Good. Yeah. So, well, that's where we're at now, but oh well, this is we'll see where this goes at least as far as in Congress. If I'm hoping none of this happens with the real red flag laws. I mean, I disagree with the president and some of these Republicans who are for this. And if this gets on the floor, I'll be out there calling them, saying, vote no against this, regardless if the president is for it or not, because we don't need any more infringements on our right to self-defense.
And other stuff, maybe. This is Trend Chat with your host, Brian Bledsoe.
Hello to fans of Trend Chat and Brian Bledsoe. The Founding Project, an education nonprofit dedicated to civics, invites you to visit our brand new website. Visit us at thefoundingproject.com. Be a part of the civics movement with The Founding Project. The Founding Project is a 501c3 education nonprofit. Please join us today.
What's going on? This is Brandon Tatum, and you're listening to Trend Chat.
All right. So, first off, thanks to 1776united.com for being a partner with Trend Chat. And as people have seen me, whether it's any of these events or whatnot, they'll see me in one of the hats or the shirts or whatnot. I mean, whether it's the Declaration of Independence shirt or I got so many different shirts. I actually got another shirt coming in that's in the mail now. That's basically about the Second Amendment, saying technology changes, but our rights don't. Talking about the technology of the musket down to the AR-15, and so just because technology changes doesn't mean that our right to self-defense change. And so so like that shirt as well. Like I said, I don't have it yet. It's in the mail right now. But I would say check them out at 1776united.com. And if you put in the code 76 militia -Trend Chat. So let me say it again, 76 like 1776, 76 militia like a well-regulated militia -Trend Chat. So 76 militia Trend Chat, and you get 20% off on your next purchase. So like I mentioned in the beginning, we're gonna have an interview with the vice president of Heritage Action for America, Jessica Anderson. And one thing I do want to mention, we've had people from whether it's the Heritage Foundation or Heritage Action. One thing I've mentioned before is that I'm a Sentinel in the Heritage Action Sentinel program, and they have these what they call a Sentinel Summit around the country, and it's great information, lots of great speakers giving out a lot of encouragement and helping people like myself as far as to be more efficient and as far as engaging with their community, and as far as the people in Washington when it comes to these bills and whenever something comes up, kind of like what I was just mentioning just now with the whole red flag laws or something. So like when something comes down and that is of importance, and Heritage Action, they really help as far as organizing and giving us the information as far as to talk with the representatives or the senators and to really advocate for liberty, advocate for conservatism. And so like I said, we're gonna have her on, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that as well. But before we get to that, like I mentioned again earlier, so I think as of you're hearing this, the first preseason game happened, I think, because the Hall of Fame was this past weekend, I think. I really don't remember. And that's something I have kind of removed myself so much from watching NFL, at least in the past couple of years, to the point I used to know when the Hall of Fame was. I used to know when the preseason games were and all that. I mean, but yeah, I have gotten so far removed from watching NFL and it's not about, I know I mentioned about Colin Kaepernick. So it's by me saying that it's not just that. It wasn't just that. I was already out kind of stopping, watching NFL before Kaepernick because there were other issues that I was having. And none of them had to do with the whole CTE issue either, because the people are voluntarily going out to play football. So that's on them. My issues were with how they were, I guess, their politics. I've mentioned this before. I'm not going to go into it. If I don't even have the episode number, because there was one episode where I think I talked about it for 45 minutes. But we had there was one incident where it all started with me. It's back when back when Rush Limbaugh was trying to buy us at the then St. Louis Rams, and then he had various owners. One of them, the Indianapolis owner, Jim Irsay, and had other players just basically throwing a fit about the potential of Rush Limbaugh owning the team, and that just kind of got on. Yeah, I didn't really like that, how they were just so adamant against him being part of a group. So that was the beginning of it. So that was like almost, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. So that was the kind of beginning of it. And then other things that happened. Anyway, nothing much to do with Kaepernick. But all that being said, now that football is starting, so I'm guessing Kaepernick got to chirp up and say something, because that's the time he really gets some attention. And so he came out and saying that he's gone over, I don't know, it was over 800 days he's been denied work. And so out there basically claiming himself as a martyr and whatever like that. And for one thing, he said he was denied work. That is wrong. That is flat out wrong. He refused to work because he was offered contracts. He just didn't want to sign them because he didn't think it was up to what he thought that he was worth. But newsflash, he's not the one who has the power to say how much his play is worth. That's up to whoever is offering the contract. And he didn't agree, so he didn't sign the contracts. And therefore, he's not playing. Now, I know a lot of people right now, ever since this whole thing with Kaepernick has gone on, wants to kind of, I guess, harp on, or kind of want to pile on Kaepernick by saying that, well, he just, because the reason why he ain't playing is not because of the whole kneeling, it's because he's a terrible quarterback. I'm not going to go that far. He's not a terrible quarterback. I'll put it this way. If he didn't have the whole controversy of what he was doing, he would at least be on the team. Not saying he will be starting anywhere, but he'll be on a team. He maybe start somewhere, maybe, because he was mediocre. Especially at the end in his last season. So I think he would still be playing right now. But then, like I said, it's the whole controversy about him kneeling and everything. And if I'm an owner, do I want to risk having this mediocre quarterback on my team with all the attention, unwanted attention that, that's going to come upon your team? You want to bring all that on and not win? Because it's not like Kaepernick is the missing piece to a winning team. Like, well, we got to have Kaepernick to win the Super Bowl. Because if he was that good, then yeah, he'd be playing. they be like, they can care less about the controversy if they know that they can get him on the team and then win the Super Bowl, because then it'll be worth it by winning. But you got to win it all, because if you don't win, then you're stuck with him with all that surrounds all his activism that I'm pretty sure he will be involved in, and on top of not winning. So, but that's the risk that you would have to take, and a lot of them, well, all of them right now are not willing to take that risk, and I don't blame them. I mean, look, I've mentioned before, he has the freedom to kneel all he wants or whatever, but that doesn't take him away from the consequences of doing that. And one of that is that you basically have made yourself to the point where people don't even want to have you on your team, especially if you have to be really good to get past controversy, especially on the level that where he was and where he is, at least as far as in the national eye, as far as public attention. But yeah. So I guess he's still not playing. I mean, who knows? Maybe he might get picked up this year. Who knows? But yeah. I mean, just because I would defend his freedom to kneel, as much as I would disagree with what he's doing and why he's doing it, I would, just because I would defend that by saying that, I mean, I'm not going to applaud his use of his freedom. So if he's gonna do that, I'm gonna be right there again saying that I think what he's doing is wrong, and he should not do that. I mean, so, but at this moment he's not getting that opportunity, so I guess he'll be kneeling at home or not watching it or whatever. So now we're gonna get to our interview with Jessica Anderson. And before one thing, I think in the interview, I guess I want to kind of make clear, because in the interview, I know I was talking about earlier about the whole hashtag do something and how that has affected where we got to the point to where, especially with this recent event, as far as using red flag laws and basically using this tragic event as an excuse to trample on our freedoms and rights in the Constitution. So I said that, reason I'm mentioning that now, because in the interview I do talk about one thing about, I mentioned about do something, but it's totally different because we're talking about political engagement. I just want to mention that first before you hear that, you hear this in the interview, you're like, well, didn't he just say about do something? Now he's talking about it in the interview. I just want to mention that first so you know where I'm coming from. So, all right, without further ado, here's our interview.
Chat with your host, Brian Bledsoe.
Hello, this is Trend Chat, and we are very pleased to have the Vice President of Heritage Action for America, Jessica Anderson, with us. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So, first thing, actually, I remember, because I've been a Seminole for a while, and one of the things, look, this may not even mean anything, but I remember you're looking at your name, and it said Jessica Custer Anderson. Okay, is that a relation to famous custard or no?
It is. Okay. It is. Not many people pick up on that these days, but my maiden name is Custer, like the general. I have the General Custer nose. For those watching at home, you can see. but yeah, he's on my dad's side. It's a direct relation, so it always gets some giggles and then some stares, depending on what part of the country we're in.
Okay, yeah, I always wanted to ask you that, and I was wondering. I'm guessing that's true. Now, given that you said that, I mean, I guess how has that been growing up with that?
I think like anyone, your family heritage is an integral part of your upbringing and is kind of part of how you view life. And so I think with that came a fierce sense of patriotism and duty to country and wanting to serve. And for me, that meant getting involved in politics and trying to ensure that conservative principles, those that I grew up on, are passed down to the next generation. That my kids have the chance to get a good paying job, get a good college education without a liberal indoctrination, and to be able to fight and serve their country one day, just as myself and my husband and my whole family have.
And that, as far as just growing up, one thing I tend to ask a lot of people, as far as, just tell us about yourself and where did the drive to be engaged in politics?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's so important that we know where we came from to know where we're going. So I grew up in South Florida, first of 4 kids, big family of 6. All of our extended family lived around us. My dad owns a small business. He's an entrepreneur. And so I grew up kind of with that sort of, reaching the American dream and American heritage as part of our culture, putting family first, putting God first. And so when I graduated college, I went to a state university. I knew that I wanted to really give back and to get involved politically on the public policy side. And so I got engaged in conservative accountability because I was frustrated with what I saw coming out of Washington. I wanted to see, less government, more freedom, and I didn't feel like that was happening in the final years of Bush as president, and of course the 8 years of Obama as president. So that was the tipping point for me to make this a full-time career, to kind of give my life to be able to do this and travel across the country and meet with activists and work on Capitol Hill to hold those members of Congress accountable as well.
Now, you were a grassroots director at Heritage Action, but then you went to the White House to work in the Office of Management and Budget. Okay, so I was trying to think of it right quick, but how was it working in the White House?
Well, working in the White House is such an incredible opportunity. It is a historic moment to serve in any White House, let alone this one with President Trump. And his vision for America to make America great again. And it was a complete honor. I was there over a year and a half, working from when we first opened the new administration till almost a year ago today. Over 4th of July was my last week there. And I loved it because I saw firsthand how government works. I ran a really robust process that is underneath all of the agencies and the executive office, which ensures that the administration can speak with one voice and that we're unified as we work with Congress. And so I learned front and center how the administration can work. I learned that Twitter was not something that the Founding Fathers envisioned when they set up government agencies and the executive office and how communications work. So I really enjoyed my time and consider it a true honor to have served for that year and a half.
And with that, now you're back with Heritage Action as the vice president. And we've talked about on the podcast a number of times. We had Janae Sraki on. We had others from Heritage, but for the people who maybe are listening to this podcast for the first time, first off, shame on you. You should have been listening a long time ago. But if people want to know, just give a little description of Heritage Action.
Sure. So Heritage Action is the sister group to the Heritage Foundation, and we were founded almost 10 years ago in 2010, really in the aftermath of President Obama passing an incredible overreach of our healthcare system with Obamacare. And we were created with one thing in mind: holding members of Congress accountable and ensuring that conservative principles have a fighting chance in the room in Washington to make it into final bills that ultimately end up in the president's desk. So at Heritage Action, we're committed to working with activists across the country, building them up, ensuring that they know the issues, are growing their networks, growing their skill base. We have events like the one that we're at today with Brian. Can always count on him being here, although he's not in his cowboy hat. You're not in your cowboy hat today. And I usually can spot you from stage because you got your cowboy hat on. So I'm going to have to talk to you about that later. He does have an American flag hat on, so I guess we'll give including a free pass.
Yeah.
Today. There you go. But in any case, we host these events, and they're really, really meant to bring folks together and allow us to focus on what we need to do to go back to Washington and ensure that conservatism has a fighting chance.
So what's new with Heritage Action for this year?
So this year we're really focused on two things. The first of which is to ensure that there's clear contrast between conservatives and the liberal left and what they're trying to espouse with everything from Medicare for All to their incredible budgets that are busting through the caps, open borders immigration, free student loans, the Green New Deal, disrupting our entire electoral process. The list really goes on the left. And so what is that clear contrast between what they're trying to do to completely disrupt our American culture, as well as our founding principles of free markets, and then what the right is focused on. And we believe that we've got the solutions that promote limited government, strong national defense, and frankly, fiscal sanity in today's time when, even some Republicans have been agreeing to more spending and an increase in spending. So what we're trying to do is really provide that contrast between the two of them so that there's a clear line and clear difference, not only so that activists know the difference, but so that voters ultimately can make those decisions in 2020 at the ballot box. So that's first and foremost. And like I said, we've got plenty of policies to pull from as the left is just veering further and further and further to the left. The second thing that's on kind of the priority list this year is ensuring that Sentinel Nation across the country is well equipped for the fight ahead in 2020. So we are working hard to make sure that policy is approachable, easy to understand. Folks know how to talk about immigration, how to talk about the legal immigration reforms that are needed, asylum reforms that are needed, why the crisis at the border is a real and current threat, all of those issues, and then that we can turn that into a robust get-out-the-vote strategy for 2020. So we want to use this year to build up Sentinel Nation with the policy so that we can put them on the road and have Sentinels go door to door in support of these policies heading into the 2020 election. So we'll be having a little bit of a shift at the end of this year to encourage folks to go out into their communities and start go to door to door for that effort. So those two things are forefront in my mind right now.
Hello, this is Brian Bledsoe, host of Trend Chat. Also, contributor at Politichicks.com. Here to tell you about the new book called Politichicks, A Clarion Call to Political Activism, with over 300 pages from contributors like myself, talking about topics such as education, social issues, healthcare, the Second Amendment, and of course, activism. I encourage you all to check it out at Politichicks.com, and is also available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
This is Dana Lash, and you're listening to Trend Chat.
I know a lot of times we mentioned on the podcast about, it's really important as far as being engaged, in whether it's locally, at state level, wherever. Just do something. That's kind of if anything, is a theme for the podcast. It's like, do something that everybody can do a little something. It's not like we don't all have to do try to do everything. I think a lot of times people tend to get fearful because they think that, if I get engaged, I have to run for Congress or something or something like that. So one thing that helps, at least for me, is the Sentinel program as far as helping people to get somewhat involved. So for one, we're here at one of the Sentinel summits here. And so I guess if people kind of want to know a little bit about the Sentinel program and also the events that go on. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. So whether you have 5 minutes a week or you have 5 hours a week, Sentinel program is for you. Whether you have a Twitter account and you like to tweet directly at people and share articles, or you engage on Facebook, or you write letters to the editor, all we're looking for is that you'll be engaged and commit to doing something to hold your member of Congress accountable and fight on those front lines of freedom in your community. So whatever that looks like for you, we're going to come alongside you. We're going to help you be the best letter to the editor writer you can be, get it placed. If you want to go on TV and talk to your local media about issues, we're going to help you do that. If you want to run for office, we're even going to help you do that. So regardless of what your interests are or how much time you have, our bottom line is, can you become engaged and can you commit to really standing strong for all of the freedoms that we love and hold dear. And if you can say yes to those two questions, then Sentinel's for you. And we have an excellent team of seasoned political operatives that live all across the country. We call them regional coordinators. They're there in your community to make sure you've got the latest information, get you on the Monday night strategy calls that we host, our Facebook page, hook you up with these events that we offer. We're in Cincinnati today. We're heading to Atlanta in a month. We're heading down to Texas, and we were in Scottsdale, Arizona a month ago. So we try to come to you just as much as we'd love to see you in Washington, D.C., but we realize not everyone wants to come to Washington. So we use other things like the Monday night call and the Facebook page to stay in touch. So if you're even on the fence and you're thinking about, wow, I'd really like to do something more than just vote, voting's a given, right? If I want to do something a little bit more, give us a shout out, call Brian, text Brian, he'll get you hooked up. You've been a great Sentinel for us all these years. And it's cool to see, something like this podcast just reach a ton of people across the country who are interested in the same issues that we are. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm just doing something. So,
Just do something.
And so here at the summit, one thing in particular, I don't know, it's kind of minor, but it's just something I really wanted to mention is, so we were going through, I guess, a lot of polling information.
Yes.
And one question that came up, look, for one, I want to ask you about, just polling highlights. But one thing in particular that stood out is that there was a question saying, do you think a 4-year degree is worth the price of tuition? And it was like across the board it said no.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that stood out of all that, I saw under little subsets no for people who had a college degree.
I know. Wild. It's so wild. Yeah. So we kicked off our day here in Cincinnati going through our latest polling research where we were trying to go in and see what was the 2016 Trump coalition, who were the voters that made sure Trump got elected, and what are the policies that today, in 2019, animate them. That way we can learn something going into 2020. And so one of the things that stood out in this poll is this higher ed question, which polled at 73% of Americans, general ballot voters, so Republicans, Democrats, and independents, believe that a 4-year college degree is not worth it. And in the crosstabs, it shows an even split. Even those that do have a college degree agree that it wasn't worth it. So something's going on here, and that's what we've been looking into. And we've got some theories that we've tested, everything from the liberal bias that college campuses have, where they're just so biased and are indoctrinating our kids. We called it liberal boot camp when you go to college, to being saddled with student loan debt, graduate from school with an art history degree, and you've got $90,000 worth of debt. How do you pay that off? And so that sort of anxiety around debt is really real. And then third, that the education system and higher ed right now is not actually equipping you for what sort of jobs we need for our future. And so, between those three things, I think we've got this theory going on about that college is not worth it, and voters are clearly showing that. So our solution to that is to remove the federal government from any form of higher ed, decouple the funding from the higher ed system. That way you don't have this steady chain of liberal indoctrination that's coming down, and hopefully that will continue to decrease the cost and provide some accountability on these college campuses. We have all sorts of ideas right now, but if your college campus is stifling free speech, they need to be cut off from federal grants from the federal government. I mean, there are a number of policy solutions like that we should be considering to get at this question. So that was one of the highlights. You asked about some of the other highlights of the polls. Immigration stood out to me as, the number one issue right now across the country. Voters are animated about this. They see the crisis at the border as real. They want the president and Congress to deal with this crisis in a very real way, not just throw money at the problem, but build in some established reforms. They're concerned about the illegal immigration overreach into social services just as much as they are the crime and safety aspect of illegal immigration and how it undermines American culture. Second thing that stood out was this perception of, and perception is reality in polls, so we totally get the joke there, but this perception of unfair treatment and how we can look at the successes of the tax bill versus what more needs to be done to ensure economic opportunity across the country and how we think about the future of work. The third thing that was a big trend within these polls is really the aspect of culture and how the left has just gone further and further to the left to undermine American culture. And when you look at everything from the left allowing and celebrating and pushing for biological males to play in female sports as part of the transgender movement, to their extremism on late-term and after-birth abortions, where babies are denied, infant care after they've been born because the mother still insists on an abortion. I mean, that's murder in any other way you look at it. To their extremism around education, around student loans and student debt, and in culture in general. So those three things: immigration, jobs, and the economy and the workforce, and then the concerns and anxiety around the left and undermining our American culture really were the three main trends that popped in these four polls that we presented this morning. And if you're joining us in Atlanta or joining us in Texas for these events, we're going to go through the polling then too, or give us a call and we'll get you some of this information so you can get it out into your communities.
All right. So, if people want to get in contact with you or know more about Heritage Action, where would they go?
So you can check us out on our website, heritageaction.com. You can find all of our contact information there. Our regional coordinators are there. Follow us on Twitter at @heritage_action for our daily updates as we move through the congressional cycle and really seek to hold Washington accountable and make it more conservative and representative of us, of all of us, the American people. So thanks, Brian, for having me.
Yeah, I want to say thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate being the Seminole, and just thanks for everything that y'all do.
Awesome.
Hey, what's up? This is Kaya Jones, and you're listening to me on Trend Chat.
This is Trend Chat.
All right. Yep, and thanks to Jessica for joining us. And I also want to mention, she mentioned about being Heritage Action being in Texas. So August 17th, Heritage Action will be in Austin. And so if you want to know more about that, go to heritageaction.com/summit. And if you're able to join us down in Austin, you will have a great time. It's as far as learning and get a chance to hear from some good speakers and policy experts. So yeah, it's August 17th in Austin, and go to Heritage Action, heritageaction.com, or go to either one of the pages on social media, on Facebook or on Twitter as well. So yeah, August 17th in Austin. And I'm thinking because I haven't even got to the New York Times story, and here we are at almost over 50 minutes. But it's, well, I guess I'll just bring it up right quick. So the New York Times had a headline after the president spoke about El Paso. I think, about El Paso in particular. And in his speech, and I'm trying to remember, because so New York Times had a headline that said Trump, what was it? It basically was saying like Trump speaks unity versus racism. I guess I should have had that up right quick, mainly because I thought I would have I thought I was gonna not do it after I'd forgotten about it. But anyway, it was a very objective headline. It basically just said the story, and that was it. And isn't that what journalism is supposed to be? Where you basically just lay out the facts, or you just try to be objective in your reporting. But oh no, the liberals, the left, AOC, and all of them, they just could not bear to think that the New York Times of all would put out a headline that would be fair to the president. AOC put out that in response to this headline that the New York Times were cowards, basically, by posting the headline there. So I have the headline now. It's Trump urges unity versus racism. That was the headline. And so, like I said, very fair headline, very objective. But the progressive, the left, they're not used to that. They're used to having their headlines in the New York Times, not any sort of objective journalism. So anyway, they basically screamed, kicked, and tweeted enough to the point to where the New York Times changed their the headline to basically, I don't even know what they changed it to, because I'm not even about to look that up. But they changed it to, I guess, to make them feel a little bit better, even though they didn't. I don't think they really liked the change either. They basically wanted the New York Times to just say what they're already saying, that he's a racist, he's a white supremacist, and blah blah blah. That's what they wanted. That's what they wanted the paper of record to show on their headline. But that was it. I don't know if I would have said any much more about that anyway, because I didn't even bring up the the headline myself to talk about it. Maybe it was a good thing I shouldn't have brought it up. I sat here and went like 5 minutes over. I'll talk about that. I don't know. Oh well. I appreciate you listening. I really do. So we're at the end. This is it, because I'm not even about to get into the other crazy story about the movie, about that movie that basically is a fantasy for liberals to kill conservatives, or kill deplorables. They use the word that's used in the movie, and maybe I might get into that next week. I don't know, but anyway. So again, I appreciate you listening. Like, share, subscribe, please. Just I look, I'm not too proud to just say please. To like, share, and subscribe. And actually, no, next week we will have Lucia Scaramaccia. Now, I don't know. It's been a while since I've said her name again, but so we're gonna have her. We're gonna have her on, and we're gonna talk about her upbringing and about her being engaged and everything. So look forward to that. And until next week, we will chat with you later.